everybody. Welcome back to the Beyond the Peloton podcast. I'm Spencer Martin from the Beyond the Peloton newsletter. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Vontz from the Choose the Hard Way podcast, thebetterlab.io. We are dissecting the first few stages of the Tour de France, Andrew's GC Wout theory, which is flourishing, which is actually just, he's got them right where he wants them. But Andrew, do you want to say anything about the Better Lab before we get going?
Yeah, for sure. What I'd like to say is I think we all know that life is better when you get good sleep. I think you show up better as a parent. You're sharper at work. Your workouts feel better. And if you're somebody who values those things, please come check out the Better Lab. You can find us in the Apple App Store. We're an early stage startup. The app is free right now. We help you mindfully build science-backed practices to sleep better that stick. And I would love for you to check it out and let me know what you think about it. You can DM me at HardwayPod. Let me know that you downloaded the app and what you think about it.
And I can attest to that. I had the genius idea to move to Europe for 2 months because I thought the time zone would be better for cycling. And it is for watching the races. You can watch the beginning of the race. Fantastic. Finish right around dinner time. Great. What I didn't take into account is then I'm up working late, which would be fine. But then no one told my children that I need to sleep in. So I'm doing the fantastic double of like late to sleep, early to rise. And I'm feeling it, Andrew. I am slowly falling apart over here. I need the Better Lab to save me.
Yeah, that's why we started the business. Good sleep makes everything better. It amplifies everything that's awesome about your health, your performance, your wellness. The thing I've been working on is managing my caffeine intake. So I've shifted all my caffeine intake to before 12:30. I don't know about you, but in the absence of doing that, I love coffee so much. Like, I love how it makes me feel. I love how it tastes. I'm definitely a coffee snob. I'd probably just keep drinking coffee until like late in the afternoon.
So it's bedtime.
It's me. Yeah. But now I've successfully shifted it back to before 12:30 for 3 straight weeks. So I'm almost ready, I think, to start working on building a new practice. And I've been working on that with the Better Lab. It's working out for me.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. And another thing, I mean, these are just depressing facts, and I'm going to start laying out for people. Yeah, it's caffeine afternoon, which will crush you as I sit here drinking a coffee afternoon. And like if you check your sleep scores, it's really like alcohol really destroys your sleep. And that's crushing for me because drinking beers might be my favorite pastime in the world, but it's actually like coming into focus that if you don't drink a lot, you're going to sleep really good. So just chew on that, everybody.
Yeah, and we help people work on that as well. My wife enjoys a glass of wine every night, and she's decided, hey, maybe she's just going to do that a few less days a week and shift it to earlier in the evening. And she's been really successful with the help of the Better Lab. So if that's something you're interested in working on, come check us out.
Well, one thing you could do is have people have professional responsibilities until like midnight, 1 a.m, and then they won't drink at night. That's been super fruitful for me.
It depends on the job. For some people, that may actually accelerate their drinking.
Yeah. I mean, I was like a bartender, and that was the most unhealthy I've ever been because I was drinking until like 4 a.m. Go figure. But to get back on track, Tour de France 2024, we are actually, to give you a peek behind the curtain, we're recording this during stage 5. Kind of it's going to be a sprint stage, I would assume. Hey everybody, it's Spencer. Apologies, but Andrew and I recorded this episode during the stage, so we didn't talk about Mark Cavendish winning the stage and setting the all-time record for Tour de France stage wins, beating Eddie Merckx. He has 35 stage wins spread over 16 years. His first one was in 2008. That's an unbelievable spread. One of the riders he beat in 2008 was Eric Zabel. Eric Zabel's son just recently retired before Mark Cavendish got this win. So just to give you perspective on how long his winning spread has been. He hasn't looked good over the last 12 months, but both Andrew and I thought that he would pull this off because when he puts his mind to something and he really wants to win a sprint, he seems to be able to do it no matter what. Almost 40 years old, 39 years old, beating the world's best sprinters in the world's biggest race. It's truly incredible. Shows that he's by far the best sprinter of all time. It's no longer even a conversation or a debate. And the most impressive thing to me is he went in 2017 through 2020, he didn't win a single tour stage. So that's a long chunk of time that he just was fallow, and he's not racking up any wins, and he still gets this record with what, that could be half of someone's, winning career as a sprinter. I mean, usually when sprinters get over 30 years old, they stop winning. And he's won through his 30s at a rate that most sprinters win through their prime. So hats off to him. It's truly impressive. There's not much to say other than that. You kind of felt it coming after the struggles on day one. You knew that this was coming. This is pure Mark Cavendish, dramatic flair script. So not super surprised, but I was happy to see it. It's special because it ties together, multiple generations of the sport. If you looked at his jerseys and equipment when they showed every one of his stage wins back when he was first winning, it looks like the Stone Age, and it just gives you a perspective on how long he's been doing this. So congratulations again, and we will discuss it in the next episode. Kind of a funny thing we're seeing is this like rebellion of the breakaways. Like no one wants to go in breakaways. And like right now there's two guys off the front, 5 minutes in the lead. The Peloton let them get away, but they almost like needed to be coaxed out of hibernation, because we saw a sprint stage on stage 3 that didn't even really have a breakaway. Like that's just it's an interesting thing to keep an eye on, because you are seeing teams get more and more strategic about how they race, as we saw on stages 1 and 2 with those great, like well-constructed victories. It seems like the idea of just going in a breakaway for TV time is dying out in some sense. Actually, early in today's stage, we saw Juan Ayuso get off the front with Lascano.
Oh, wow.
They said it was a joke. I don't fully understand the joke there. And like Pogačar was up there mixing it up. It kind of feels like psychological warfare on Visma. Like you can't even relax on these sprint stages because we're going to be sending our guys into the move. But just to give people a little bit of background, we've had 4 stages completed so far, 1 in progress, 2, I'd say like legit GC days, stage 2 and 4. On stage 2, we saw Jonas Vingegaard look amazing when he marked Tadej Pogačar. I think everyone got a little excited, but they had to remember that's a 5-minute climb. And then yesterday on the Galibier, that was an hour-long climb to finish off the stage when they already had a lot of climbing earlier in the stage. And Jonas looked a little cooked at the top. Like Tadej Pogačar, if you weren't paying attention to the weather, super stiff headwind, and the Galibier from that side isn't steep until the last kilometer. So he's just sitting in the group, waiting for the last kilometer, launched with like 900 meters to go. Jonas marked him for about 400 meters. And then I think a lot of people are like, well, he only lost 7 seconds at the summit, but he lost those 7 seconds in about 400 meters, and then even lost more time over the top, which would indicate you're not in fantastic shape. Remco Evenepoel looked good, but like I think he pulled out half a minute to Primož Roglič in 800 meters of attacking. So and then he finishes 35 seconds ahead of the chase group. Jonas Vingegaard he gets dropped from that chase group, finishes 2 seconds back. I think it's pretty obvious at this point, Tadej Pogačar is amazing, like on amazing form, because there's actually more competition here than I thought there'd be. Remco looks better than I thought he would. Jonas looks much better than I thought he would. Carlos Rodriguez looks good. Juan Ayuso looks better than I thought he would. And then Tadej's still above those guys. And I know there's this theory of, and it actually bothers me a lot. It's like, well, Jonas is going to get better. It's like, well, why? Why would you? What's the proof of that? What's the evidence? Actually, I would say he's going to get worse because his base isn't as good. Tadej's base is better. Just like we saw last year, the rider with the better base is probably going to be stronger later in the race. I don't see the improvement coming. If someone could lay that out for me scientifically, that'd be fantastic. But Andrew, what's your takeaway outside of your GC Wout theory? Looking, I'd say slightly on the rocks with Wout 38 minutes back. What's your takeaway so far from these first 5 stages?
Wout's poised for a big comeback. I mean, I think that this is a classic Visma Lisa Bike disinformation campaign. I think behind the scenes, they got insiders, like people deep in the sport, kind of the pro cycling Illuminati deep state of which we're a part. Everybody was pretty hyped about GC Wout, and then they show up, and what do we have? We have Jonas is flying, although I don't think we talked about this last week. Yeah, because Geraint Thomas made these comments on what's occurring, I think, after stage 1. Geraint did a bit of fat shaming. He said that Jonas is looking a bit big, which
I don't know about that. He looks... Did you hear what Jonas said yesterday? He said, Tadej put time into me on the downhill because he's so fat, basically.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys.
I mean, come on. It's psychological warfare. It's flying around in the Peloton. But yeah, Geraint Thomas did say that. He didn't use the word chubby, but he said, hey, Jonas not looking quite as lean as he typically does. His legs are not looking as defined as they typically do when he's in Grand Tour form. And I would say Garrett probably has a better view of that than we do on TV. And
it is a funny thing. You stare at a lot when you're riding with people a lot, and you do actually become intimately familiar with people's fitness levels and their leg definition because you're just staring at their legs all the time.
Yeah, and sometimes you observe there's absolutely no correlation. I'm sure you've had the experience as I have of there's just some
walking proof of this.
Yeah, like skinny or just nondescript person who's toneless and they're just destroying you. And usually they're a 60-year-old masters racer and they're wearing a head sweat. And you're like, how's this guy completely smoking me? Going back to that Pog attack, one of the things that jumped out in me about that, he's always had an extremely high cadence, but he had to be like 110 RPMs out of the saddle when he launched that attack and went over the top of the Galibier. I felt like I was watching a SoulCycle instructor that had just had a big dubstep drop when he got out of the saddle and started pounding. It was something else.
Yeah, actually, the cycling podcast, the hosts were standing right at that spot when he attacked, like recording the episode. And like you could audibly hear how blown away they were with how fast he was going. I mean, I wish I would have been there, but it was impressive. And you got to remember, that's close to 9,000 feet where he attacked, after hours of climbing, and he's that explosive. Really impressive. I mean, if I was him and Jonas was saying I was a little big in my britches, I'd say, well, I still dropped you, bro, uphill. So
yeah,
like, so what's going to happen when I'm in shape in the third week?
Yeah, he was looking pretty good. I'm expecting Pog to do a Beyond the Peloton tribute attack probably in the next couple of days. So I think we can watch for that as well. The other thing that's jumped out at me early in the race, I was thinking about the past couple of years, and Pog has always been highly strategic, of course. For some reason, the analogy that's jumping to mind for me is the evolution we've seen with Mathieu van der Poel, which is probably not the right one. I do think over the years we've seen Mathieu van der Poel go from, like somebody who came out of the X-Men factory just discovering what to do with his mutant superpowers to someone who has them a bit more under control and understands how to use them. I feel like Pog's lust for victory, particularly at the Tour, has led to him probably expending too much energy early on in the race and going for every possible stage. Obviously, he's not doing that this year, and it's been interesting to hear the comments from both Team UAE and Visma Lisa Bike. Team UAE that made comments that they just keep talking about how strategically they had a plan to test the top GC riders. Then yesterday it was about, we're going to test teams in totality, or we're going to try to break off entire teams. Just stuff that really we haven't seen happen before at the Tour de France. So I feel like Pog is riding more strategically. We'll of course talk about what's going on with Juan Ayuso. I think that's potentially a source of concern. I'm riding for a GC slot /
we'll get to that.
I'm here to do work.
That is weird.
Yeah, it's super weird.
Potentially one of the weirdest things I've seen. I mean, I guess I even mentioned this a few weeks ago, but the Vinokurov Ulrich battle inside T-Mobile, I think that was 2005. It was 2005 or 2004. That was weird. This might be weirder. I mean, for those who didn't see it, first of all, in stage 2, he's kind of MIA every time Pogačar needs someone to work for him. So Adam Yates is stepping up and doing the work. Adam Yates got third at this race last year, so he's a better rider, GC rider, than Juan Ayuso is right now at the moment. Maybe in the future that will be different. And then yesterday on stage 4, he's straight up hiding. I guess they had this rotation plan so they didn't burn through guys and they could keep them high up in the GC. Like they were each supposed to take poles, go back, come back to the front. Ayuso takes a pole, and he had to be, if you watch, like both Almeida and Pogačar are talking to their radios.
Right.
Ayuso starts talking to his radio. Clearly they radioed back to him. He comes to the front, takes a pole, goes back. They think he's dropped. Joao Almeida looks back towards the top and sees him hiding in the back, and he's hiding back there so that he doesn't have to do work, which would potentially drop him and put him down in the GC. And they like yell at him in front of everyone to come forward. I've never seen this happen. Like they're screaming at him, screaming into the radio. He comes forward and works, is absolutely fine. So we know he wasn't on the limit. And then finishes in the chase group. And I believe for a while he was like pulling. I swear I saw him like pulling on the descent and stuff with his teammate out in front. So that's not good at all. I mean, in fact, that could be a disease inside the team, because if you're Yates and Almeida, you're saying, well, why are we sacrificing our chances? If you're not, maybe I'm just not going to do that. I mean, frankly, like after that stage, maybe I was a little hot-headed. I was like, if I was UAE, I'd send him home. I'm like, that's inexcusable. Like, what are you doing? We should have brought Rafa Micah, who would have done work, because if you're going to ride for fourth, what good does that do for us at any point? Like, it doesn't help them at all.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on. It was super odd, and particularly given the public statements that UAE has made about discipline within the team, that everyone, when they sign the contract, they know what they're there to do. We've talked about it. It seemed like they had very tight discipline within the team, and they weren't suffering from kind of the Ineos plague of people fighting to have a position in the top 10 in GC. Of course, Ineos, not a snowball's chance of winning this race, but this isn't something. I don't know if you're UAE, like, why do you care about having, I don't know. I just don't get it. Win the race. Why do you?
I don't think UAE cares. I think Juan Ayuso
I see
cares.
why Juan Ayuso might want to be third on GC, because potentially he wants to. I mean, like, where would he? Yeah, like, where would he go? I'm actually thinking now, where would he go? I think he'd go to EF, and then he would be someone riding to win the Tour, but who wasn't going to win the Tour.
I think Movistar would be the obvious landing spot, right?
Yeah, I think Movistar would be the best place for him to go, and then I think we'll see the typical Movistar script play out. I mean, the question would be, if he were riding for GC for himself, do you see him as someone who's capable of winning the Giro or Vuelta?
There's a hot take. I said this to Johan Brunel last night, so he's like an Ayuso fanboy. He knows this is out in the ether. Right now, Juan Ayuso is Enric Mas. Like, if you actually lay over their top results, he is Enric Mas. So, like, replace every time you hear Juan Ayuso, think Juan Ayuso. Just think, what if Enric Mas did this? You'd think that's ridiculous. Having said that, Enric Mas at his very, very best could win the Vuelta, or the Giro. So yeah, I do think it's possible, but we'll talk. I guess we can talk about it right now. Like, think how good Remco Evenepoel is at this tour.
Yeah,
he still doesn't have a path to win other than Pogačar poops to bed, because it just like it's hard to win Grand Tours. Really good insight, but like, let's say the Vuelta rolls around. I guess Jonas isn't going to go because he might be having another kid. So maybe that is the opening. But let's say Remco goes. You know, it's not like you can't just roll up and have a weak field anymore, especially at the Vuelta. It's always super competitive. So it's not easy. He could, in theory, yes, win one. I mean, what he did yesterday, that was a seriously hard climb. UAE made sure the final climb was like, you had to be in the 7 watts per kilo club to even be in that group. So the fact that he was there is really impressive. But I mean, would you say he was better than Joao Almeida yesterday? I wouldn't. I actually thought Joao Almeida looked stronger. He did get dropped on a descent because he's not the best bike handler, and Ayuso is, better at technical stuff. So I mean, I don't know. Do you think Joao Almeida could win a Grand Tour? Yes, I guess if things went right. But it's there's not an obvious path. I mean, it's actually not. You really don't want a rider with that level of ego. That's not Jonas Vingegaard or Tadej Pogačar, in my opinion.
I'm spacing out right now. Who was Pog's domestique at the Giro who was bulletproof? I should know this.
Rafa Micah, who's at the Tour of Austria right now.
Do you think that UAE is regretting not deploying him to the Tour right now?
I do. Yeah. And I mean, it gets complicated with Ayuso because he's a big talent. He's quote-unquote young. Is he? I mean, but what's the path there? In 10 years when Pogačar retires, you're like, all right, Juan, now's your time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I heard there was a rumor going around that he had it in his contract that he had to be treated as a race leader at every race. That's obviously not true, because how would you enforce that or even define that? Like, no, you're the leader. You're the leader of the second domestique duty. It's like, that's such an ambiguous definition that I don't think you could actually really enforce it. And I guess we'll see. Maybe it is helpful for them that he's high up in the GC, like we saw today where he goes in the breakaway. The problem with his actions yesterday, though, is it shows the competition he's not going to risk his own.
Right.
He's not going to go up and over and beyond to risk his own GC position, which means they don't have to worry about him getting up breaks because that's risky. They don't have to worry about him attacking because that's risky. So if he's just sitting there, you actually are kind of literally just road furniture. You're like riding anonymously to 4th or 5th place, sitting in the back of the GC group. I remember it was like Adam Yates and maybe like the 2015 or 16 tour. That's what he did. He just was last wheel in the GC group every day, which was good for him. It just doesn't help your team leader, especially on a windy climb of the Galibier where being in front of him would have given him a massive advantage. And that takes me back to Pogačar. I feel like getting heat for not being at the level people thought he should be at. He's 45 seconds up on Remco Evenepoel, 50 seconds up on Jonas Vingegaard, a minute 10 up on Ayuso, 1:14 up on Roglic. After 4 days that weren't really designed for time gaps, like ASO did this smartly so that the race wouldn't totally blow up after 4 days. In a headwind Galibier, easy side of Galibier climb, actually you wouldn't intuitively say that there would be big gaps there. And if it was a summit finish, they would have been small, like 7 seconds to second place. But just through pure like strength and fitness, he pulled out extra time on the descent. The fact that he has as big of a gap as he has right now is super impressive. I feel like it's not getting enough credit. And then you have like Vingegaard after the stage saying like, well, I thought I'd be 5 minutes down by this point. So actually Tadej kind of sucks. Where it's like, come on, people, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, what's impressing me is how Jonas is playing things out with the media. He's a champion. He's always been extremely poised, but the way he's handling this when he's clearly in a disadvantaged position and not waving the white flag and is doing everything possible to try to get into Pog's head, I think it's amazing. I just really like how he's handling this. The one thing that, again, we talked about this for a moment, delta between the 7-second gap at the top of the summit and then ending up losing a total of 50 seconds between the two time bonuses and the time that Pog gained on the descent. And it was interesting, the Visma Lisa Bike DS's post-race interview, he did talk about Jonas wrecked on a descent, and of course he's going to be slightly more cautious. Not that much more cautious. What I mean?
He took time on Pogačar in the upper part of the descent, which is the most technical.
Right. So he was taking risks. The thing that did jump out at me, though, was when he clearly wasn't going to bridge to Pog, and he had that group closing on him. I felt like he could have just sat up and saved a little, right? It's like, what was that about? That didn't make a lot of sense to me. That didn't seem strategic.
And it potentially cost him, look at the results.
Right. He could have gotten the time bonus if he'd been slightly more fresh and hadn't gotten worked over in the sprint and stuck on the wrong wheel, which is what ended up happening.
Yeah. He lost 2 seconds of real time. And then let's just even say 4th or 3rd place. That's 4 seconds. Yeah, I know. I think he should have sat up way early. I'd be curious to hear what was going through the radio at that point. Some of his decision making, I almost feel like things are flipped. I do think some of the narrative around Pogačar being like weak, quote unquote, and like everybody, let's flash back to a month and a half ago. Remember after Europa at the Giro, it's like he's not as good as we thought he would be. He only took 30 seconds. It's like the same thing is happening at the Tour, but he's been really conservative. They didn't pull that move back on stage 1 for him to sprint. They didn't pull the break back on stage 2 for him to get time bonuses. He's actually making a lot of conservative decisions, waiting a long time to attack yesterday. I feel like Vingegaard is the one that is being a little erratic in his decision making. Think of stage 2. Like, why was he even relaying through with Pogačar?
Right.
I saw like Cosmo Catalano tweeting like, and Jonas is pulling through why, and then everyone in the comments was like, "It's the right thing to do." I'm like, "Oh boy,
it's the spirit of gravel.
Do not understand
gravel
cycling." And then yesterday he should have just sat up the moment he realized he wasn't going to catch him. I think frankly, if I'm sitting here in this Ibis lobby in Colmar, being honest, I'd say it reeks a little bit of insecurity. He's making decisions that he didn't make when he was at his very best.
Yeah, completely. I'm thinking about Roglic now 114 down. I liked how he rode that finale
magician
yesterday.
The fact that
right?
he got dropped on the first climb.
Yeah.
He got dropped after like 10 minutes of racing yesterday.
Yeah.
Finished in the first chase group.
Yeah. So I thought that was impressive. We touched on the Ayuso situation, of course. How concerned are you about Adam Yates and how he looked yesterday? Because it didn't seem like he could contribute to the pacemaking at all. And I'm wondering if he's sick.
Well, they used him early. He was pacing a lot earlier because actually things get weird when Pavel Sivakov drops.
Right.
Because then you have Yates, Ayuso, Almeida, and they're all looking at each other saying, well, who's going to work?
Right.
Yates has been doing a lot of work while those guys haven't up until this point.
Sure.
So, yeah, I actually was surprised because normally Yates can pull and then stick in that group, kind of like Almeida and Ayuso did.
Yeah.
Finish further back. I think it's good because he loses 2:42 yesterday. He's with Bernal and Geraint Thomas and Vlasov, or a little ahead of Vlasov, but Jorgensen. The quicker he can get out of the GC rat race, the better it is, because then he can maybe take on that Rafa Micah role where it's all in for Tadej.
Yeah, good
and
point.
They need that.
Good point. I'm looking at the GC right now, and Remco. Yeah, again, like Remco yesterday, they were talking about him closing that gap, bridging up to that small break, and then he did well in the sprint to get those time bonuses. But I was just like, this guy, he's just riding like someone wasting a ton of energy. They're talking about his strength as a time trialist to bridge back up to that group, and I just thought, man,
it's all wasted.
Yeah, you're wasting a ton of energy right now. It's just. Yeah, he's kind of the opposite of, he's just like guy wasting a lot of time and effort at the moment. And C-Rod looking good. I'm really bullish on C-Rod. I want him to get off of Ineos and be somewhere where he can be a winner.
He might be the only person left on Ineos after this year. He's pure class, by the way.
I like
the
that
guy's
guy.
Just better the harder the races, better the longer the races. I like him a lot. The thing about Roglic, he goes over the summit about 33 seconds down. Remco is about 11 seconds down. And he's such a good ascender. He catches Remco and drops him.
Love it.
And then Remco has to chase back on. The thing about Roglic, though, amazing for him not to lose a ton of time yesterday. Second time he's been dropped in 2 days.
Yeah.
Something's not right. And I don't know if you've noticed, he looks really skinny. Like Remco looks a lot skinnier than in the Dauphiné, and it seems to be doing him well. Primoz looks super skinny, and he's clearly not the same rider he was last year, the year before. I'm a little worried about him. He does have a long time until the Pyrenees. The Tour kind of goes into hibernation with a time trial and a gravel stage, and then it's a long time to the Pyrenees. So maybe he could get right, but I don't love where he's at the moment.
No, I'm not loving it. I'm just taking a look here. Who else have we got? Okay, we have to talk about Pidcock, of course, and I think this has been pointed out in many places, but the ideal preparation to do well at the Tour de France is not riding a mountain bike World Cup.
Montana mountain bike World Cup. I can't believe that.
Not crazy. Riding, just from a risk management point of view, and also from an energy management point of view, and being prepared to show up at the Tour. What do you think? It seems to me he's just going to probably continue to struggle because he didn't come into this race fresh, right? You know what I mean? He didn't enter the race in the right condition. Clearly his objective is winning the Olympic gold medal in mountain bike. And so do you see potentially an early exit for Pidcock from the Tour? What do you think?
So he finishes 11 minutes down yesterday. I have my betting show with Johann's back, and he was like third favorite for the stage, which I thought was weird. I feel like watching the World Cups gives you secret forbidden knowledge. Everyone was like, Pidcock could be in the GC. It's like, did you not watch? He was just racing mountain bikes. It makes no sense whatsoever. So it's actually logical that he's so out. You can't be a part-time Tour de France GC contender. That makes no sense whatsoever. As you say, he's doing it to win the Olympics mountain bike. So potentially that's worth it. I guess if you think, well, what really are my odds of winning the Tour? I can be a double Olympic mountain bike champion. That's a big deal in the UK. He seems to enjoy mountain bike. He's kind of even redefining what's possible in that discipline. And he's getting paid big bucks on the road. So I guess all the power to him while he can make that work. But it's like when Jack Dorsey was CEO of Twitter and Square. It's like, wait, how long is this going to last? Is anyone going to realize this isn't a good idea for the companies he's running? So I'm not surprised. I'm more confused about why Ineos is letting this happen. I guess the answer is there's no one. I mean, I think we hinted at it the last episode, but Steve Cummings got pulled off. He was like head of racing and he got pulled off tour team at the last second. So he's not there.
Yeah.
Allegedly that was due to Pidcock not wanting him there. So
what?
if that's true.
Seriously?
That would tell you that Pidcock has a lot of pull in that team.
Wow. Tails wagging the dog over there at Ineos. You need to get him in line.
Exactly. So it seems like when Papa Brailsford is away, the Pidcock will play is what's going on. And I guess there's just no one in charge because, it is a weird dynamic. I was thinking like, come on, really? Like the team performs better when Brailsford's there. But like, if I'm working on my newsletter at night and like there's no one around, I am kind of like dicking around a little bit. And then if there's someone else in the room, I'm kind of working harder.
Right.
So I guess that's what's happening here, where if there's like no boss, on the bus day in and day out, the team is kind of unraveling a little bit. I mean, I say that as Carlos Rodriguez looks amazing, but that seems to be more of Rodriguez being amazing and just having, I'm sure the staff is good. Like the frontline staff is very good, but just from an upper level management position, seems to be a bit of a power vacuum there.
Yeah. I mean, would completely agree. And this is a year of transformation and reformation for Ineos, or another way to think about it is things falling apart. Although, I don't know, maybe the most important thing to them is to win that Olympic gold medal in mountain biking, because that's what will make Sir Rod happy.
But that's weird because they're not racing for Ineos when they do that.
Yeah, good point.
Because
I don't know.
I don't really get it actually.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
I maybe would have selected. They don't have a deep team though. I mean, look, if you look back at their classics, like Pidcock was good, but if it wasn't like Pidcock's day, they just don't have a lot of winners, and that even conflicts with someone like Intermarché. We should mention Benny and Girmay, by the way.
Oh yeah,
stage 3, amazing. But you look at Intermarché, small team, and they have a lot of guys in their team that are, in crude American terms, they're just dogs. Like they can just win if they have to. What's crazy about the Biniam win on stage 3? The team wasn't even working for him, and he was supposed to be leading out. Like Gerber Thiessen is his name, their sprinter. And if you listen to his post-race interview, he's like, yeah, I was supposed to be leading him out, and the crash happened, and I thought, I just have to try for myself. Like, that's a winning mentality. Just like, actually, it's almost to the point of delusion. It's the same thing Ayuso was thinking of, like, you know what? I'm supposed to be working for Pogačar, but I think I could win this thing. And in Ayuso's case, it's delusional, but in Biniam's case, it was clearly the right decision because his team's up there. They run out of guys in the lead out because Biniam's not there. They're kind of panicking, looking around, and he's just in the back, soloing, like freelancing his way to a Tour de France sprint victory, which is almost impossible to do. Shoots through a gap that basically wasn't there, but he made it work and then wins the stage. Like, truly an incredible win. I think, it is like a monumental victory because he's the first Black African to win a Tour de France stage. That's a big deal. From Eritrea, that's not an easy jump to make. There's more top level Eritrean cyclists than you think. Like, you got 6 at his national championships before the tour. But just like it, to like have the skills, not from Europe, to like come in and have the race skills, have the ability to read the race, and then like that inner winning confidence. Very rare to be that talented with that level of belief in yourself. Like, that's kind of what impressed me the most about that win.
Yeah, and I think an example of someone coming back from multiple extreme, highly traumatic crashes. So this is almost as if had Alaphilippe come back from his sequence of crashes and then won in this manner, which we haven't seen him do, right? So I think that Girmay is the rare rider who can overcome that level of physical trauma and and just like the intensity mentally, emotionally, and he's just, he just flips the switch when he has the opportunity. I found myself the past couple of months questioning whether he could ever get back to the top level. And then after his most recent crash, I was like, man, this is going to be really, really tough. So historic win, and fantastic to see him back on top. And I think clearly like a very, very big future ahead for him. So it's good to see him back in the saddle, the winning saddle.
The winning saddle. I mean, and what's crazy is, so he was out for, it felt like 2 years, just kind of struggling, was good this spring. And then it was in the Wout crash.
Right.
Gets back, was good at the Giro, crashes again.
Right.
And then has a pretty good actually lead into the Tour. Second at Rund und Köln. You don't get second there without good legs. But yeah, just super impressive guy. Only 24 years old too. And he looked fast. Like he was fast in that sprint. I actually didn't know he had that level of speed. So, we don't know. I guess the outcome will be decided by the time the episode goes up. I wouldn't be shocked if he has second sprint victory. I don't think that was a fluke at all.
Yeah, and perhaps the topic of crashes leads us to GC Wout. So I know Wout he's been on the ground in this Tour. Does that account for being 38 minutes down? Maybe
doesn't help.
Maybe doesn't help. I mean, Luke Rowe was talking about this on What's Occurring, I think yesterday or the day before. But anytime you hit the ground, it's energy your body, even if it's just a scrape, it's energy your body has to expend to something other than your recovery and showing up at the race next day ready to kick everyone's ass. So any tiny amount of energy expenditure not going towards performance can be a massive setback. So we don't really know how severe the impact from a recovery point of view of that wreck is on Wout. So I'm going to go ahead and use that as my rationale for why we're not seeing GC Wout right now. What do you think, Spencer?
It's great cloud cover, that's for sure. He said he wasn't in great shape before stage one. And then I actually think he should have won stage one.
Oh, yeah, totally. I was thinking that too. I mean, 2 years in a row where it's kind of tailor-made and he gets shut out.
I know. And actually, I was on a ride yesterday, did a climb. I thought, pretty hard climb. And then I was like, it's Strava. Like, wow, all these pros are on here. I wonder why. And then I looked it up. It was in the 2019 Tour. Stage finished in Colmar. I was like, this must have been like one of the hardest stages of the race. It was a bunch sprint. And Wout finished second. And I was like, oh no, like we're all getting old, including Wout. Like he was at the 2019 Tour. That's 5 years ago. And as the time is ticking by in his career, he's not winning nearly as much as you would expect from someone of that talent level. So like to see him just like these near misses are starting to add up, and like it almost pains me to see him get so close to these, things that do like start to tally up and little ticks in your career, and just missing out on them time after time after time. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah. So we had that. And then of course, Philipsen missing out on his sprint opportunity as well. He got caught in or behind that wreck the other day. I believe Van der Poel also has been on the ground at this point. What are we thinking is going to go down with Jasper?
He'll probably win. I do think he's not looked as good, but as I said yesterday in Outcomes, not the most flattering angles. It's like, it's been just a lot of hard stages where he's not going to do well. He got totally roasted in the intermediate sprint yesterday by Pedersen and Girmay. I don't know how much to read into that though. I actually couldn't. I rewatched the clip a lot of the crash. I couldn't tell if he was on the ground or not. It kind of looked like he was from stage 3. I would, if I had to guess, I'd guess he wins just because that lead out is so good. But curious to see. On the topic of crashes, like I'm sitting here right now and it is very cold and very rainy. And then I'm going to the 6th stage tomorrow, sprint probably in Dijon. I don't think it's going to be rainy, but eventually these guys, like with these, like this series of sprint stages coming up, they're going to get dumped on. And that's going to be a real test for both the sprinters and the GC riders, like just to stay out of trouble. And those intercity sprint finishes, like that could be something to keep an eye on as the days go by.
Yeah.
Especially as they go north into the country.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. So here's more detail on the crash. So Philipsen did go down. It sounded like he had a rough night, it sounds like. And one of his lead out men, not Matthew van der Poel, Jonas Rickard, he also went down. So they both have bruises, and it sounds like Philipsen had some road rash on his butt. So that's
not good.
Yeah, it's a good example of that could have some serious knock-on consequences. I thought Van der Poel had gone down, but he didn't. He had a double puncture. And
I also thought he went down. It was a very weird, like 10 minutes. It was hard to tell what was going on.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Philipsen went down at high speed. Yeah. He was going 60 kilometers an hour. So that's not good. You're going to feel that one in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're live betting on the stage right now and this gets out, don't bet on Philipsen. That actually makes it really hard. I'd say one last thing I'll say is the course has been amazing.
Yeah, like it has been.
ASO gets a lot of crap, but what an amazing course design. And to think it's got so much better. Do you remember when Jean-Marie Leblanc was the tour director? Be like 8 days of sprint stages, one after another, and like nothing would happen until the second week. So they've done a very good job of making them hard stages that show you a little bit, but not so hard that they blow up the GC right away.
Yeah, and actually, I think part of why the course has gotten better, I think it has to do with work that was going on when I was at Strava that continues to this day, which is like they're using Strava to help put these courses together. And I think it's helped make it much more interesting.
Yeah, we were talking to our friend Jonathan Kaplan, who had a very it's a good question. It's a simple, good question on stage 3 of, I've even won the same thing right now. Like this stage, there's nothing happening. And you'd think, well, why do these stages exist? Why don't they just make every stage a mountain stage? Well, one, if you made every stage really hard, some stages would be ridden really easy because there's just a limiter on how hard people can go day in and day out. But something that's underappreciated, you have to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And you have to get it from point A to point B in cities that are willing to pay you 6 figures to start and finish in the town. And you can't finish a stage and say, hey everyone, we're getting in the car, we're going to drive 9 hours so we can be positioned at the base of the mountains for a mountain stage. So, a lot of these stages, they do just have to get to the place. And as you say, Strava, I think, helps them a lot to map out slightly more interesting routes than just like the Vuelta used to be really bad about this. They used to just jump on the highway and ride to the town they needed to get to. So we've come a long way since those days.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Jonas Abrahamsson, who, man of the moment. We've been a champion of this guy for nearly 2 years now. I've been in contact with him probably like the past 6 months. And I thought that what Uno X did was incredible. And they have limited chances, I would say, in this tour, realistically. Magnus Cort, I think, has the potential to be a stage winner, which we talked about on the last episode. But they very clearly had a plan like, hey, we're going to get the KOM. It's going to be Jonas, and we're going to hold on to it for a couple of days. And then Uno X is getting potentially what they need out of this tour. Not the guy you probably would have thought would be the human who would be ideally suited to this. We were talking about some of the body dysmorphia and body image related things and body shaming that goes on in cycling. But here, this guy's a beefcake. It's great to see him out there. It's not the body type you would expect to be in the KOM jersey early on in the race, but he's made it
still in it.
Yeah.
After the Galibier,
yeah.
He's still in KOM and
Incredible.
Points. Almost won stage 2, which had that climb is brutally hard. And they did it twice. And he almost won. It's really, really impressive. And I'd say the most impressive thing about his ride, I think he's about 80 kilos. Big guy, beefcake, as you say. He looks good in the polka dots, which is not easy to do. The polka dot jersey does not lie. If you're not in shape, it will tell everyone. So he's gained a lot of weight, 20 kilos, he says. That's like over 40 pounds. But he's carrying it well, and you can tell, like, he's just generating so much power on the bike with that extra weight that that was clearly the right decision for him to forget about being a pure GC rider and just be an all around super strong guy he's going out and he's just taking the race to everyone else. And as you say, Uno X is getting what they need out of this tour because of, and I will say that the most important part of this, a well-considered plan. It's not just, this total energy or something where it's just, we'll just, pourquoi pas? Why not? Why not today? We'll just take the race as day by day. It's no, you've got these teams showed in the first few stages, you can win. You have to have a plan though. And this is clearly a plan from Uno X that they've executed perfectly.
Yeah. And Spencer, something I've been reflecting on in relation to Abrahamson, there's an interview with Dan Lloyd that he did. So Dan Lloyd did an interview for GCN now that they've bought GCN back, and about this intentional weight gain and the results that it's had, the thinking behind it, and got into Abrahamson's background a bit. So he came into the sport the same way Remco did. I think he was a fairly elite level junior soccer/football player, had an injury, went into cycling for rehab, and now he's a world-class world tour rider. Similarly, there's been a bit of info about this. I'd like to learn more, but Frank Vandenbroek in his first tour supporting Romain Bardet to that spectacular stage win on stage one. Apparently he came from rugby and had an injury, moved over into professional cycling. I was thinking about when we have our world tour team license and have carved out generous multi-million-dollar salaries for ourselves for running the team. I think a great
where'd all our money go?
Yeah,
that's It's why don't we have any budget? Don't mention our $1 million salaries.
It's strategy. But I think the Moneyball move here is more scouting of injured ball sport athletes. Traditionally, there have been a lot of professional cyclists who have come out of running and out of downhill skiing. I think we've seen enough ball sport athletes transfer into the sport now that I don't know. It's maybe I would be scouting D1 soccer football programs looking for injured athletes that have, exited these sports that you potentially could turn into world-class riders. I don't think that's going on right now. It's definitely not happening in the United States.
You might have just mentioned this. Apologies if I missed it, but that's the Remco Evenepoel was an injured professional soccer player.
Yep.
And he started riding a bike. I mean, all those guys, Frank Vandenbroek, Remco, Jonas Abrahamson, they just look like athletes on the bike. They just pure athletes. I definitely think there's something to that. The running thing, it's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, especially with Beniam doing well. It's we could be fighting all these cyclists in Ethiopia and Kenya. It's he's from Eritrea and they have a great cycling culture, which is almost critical to producing cyclists, because you could be the best cyclist in your town. If there's no one else cycling, this is the story of our lives, right? There's no one else riding. You're just not going to get good enough because there's no one to sharpen. You have to sharpen your skills against someone else.
Steel, ideally, steel.
Yeah, against 100 other people. But running is not cycling. I hate to break the news to everyone. You can be a very, very good runner. I was on a high school track team with a lot of people that went D1, fantastic running athletes, just better than me, purely better than me. And then we would jump on a bike and I'd be way faster than them because it's a different sport. It just takes different muscles and a different system. So I am on board with this. I think you actually do not see many people go from running to top level cycling. Mike Woods is a complete unique case almost in that. So I'm on board, Andrew. Let's find the rugby players and soccer players who are injured and get them on a bike.
Yeah, and to your point regarding professional cycling is not going out and doing an LT or just barely supra LT effort, and I think it's not obviously it's not just about the engine. You have to be a psychopath. The level of risk that these guys have to take hundreds of times within a race is, that's something that you have to select for as well. It's not just the engine and hand-eye coordination, obviously proprioception, just things that you do see in ball sports and athletes at the highest level. Those are some of the qualities that you actually need to be a professional cyclist, and outside observers, of course, aren't always cognizant of that. So that's where the Beyond the Peloton talent development program might start to focus.
Yeah, it's a great point, especially with the coordination and like you can think of all the rowers, tons of rowers. It's, talk about a brutal sport, or it like very, I guess, anaerobic. I don't really know rowing that well. People are strong and they can ride bikes very well. A lot of rowers are very fast on a bike. How many rowers become top level cyclists? Like think of Drake, was that guy Drake Duel?
Yeah.
Guy's unbelievable, like putting out unbelievable times. Doesn't get great results because cycling's not rowing. You're not sitting in a boat just rowing as hard as you can. There's a lot of nuance and a lot of coordination, it's almost an extreme sport, like rugby. It just, people are moving fast around you and you have to react to them. It's a much different skill set.
Yeah, and it is a violent collision sport too, because you're going to be colliding with the ground at high speed many times during your career, unfortunately. So I actually think the parallels with combat sports, collision sports, it's a pretty direct one.
And you have to be okay with that. Like think of Primoz. Think of how many bad crashes he has. He just had a terrible crash. He's I'm gonna just fling myself down the Galibier as fast as I can. Like that's crazy. That's not normal. That's not smart. You shouldn't do that. But you have to just be willing to get absolutely pummeled and just come back and be willing to risk doing that again.
Something I haven't seen I forget what it's called, but Zwift has the talent camp where they give somebody a pro contract at the end. There are other programs like this. Something I haven't seen at those camps that you will see at the Beyond the Peloton talent development camp, we're going to bring out the tap lights.
It's important,
right?
It's important, people. Yeah. This is all fascinating. I feel like this is quite underappreciated and filtered for in pro cycling.
Yeah, so watch for it.
All right, well, thanks, Andrew, and I'll be on the ground for the next 2 stages of the race. I'll try to grab some audio we can toss into the next episode.
Yeah, and we'll be watching for that Pog tribute attack at your feet. So just wherever you're positioned on the course, I'm sure that's where we're going to see it go down.
Like 600 meters left of stage 6, he just whips off the front, wins the race just for us. And backed by popular demand, you have to go because you have I forgot our line. You have industries to disrupt.
I do. I have industries to disrupt currently.
All right. Well, thank you so much for donating your time, and we will talk soon.